Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Beits. I am with Gallop Technology Group, and I am super excited about Austin's presentation today. We are going to spend about 50 minutes or so to hear a lot about AI, from the basics to the ethical ruling that you guys need to know as attorneys and other law firm employees. If you're not in the legal field, you're still in the right spot, because the information here, even though it's some related to lawyers and the ethical ruling and the ABA, etc., there's a lot of very basic technical, useful information for all of us to learn from. So what we're going to do is I'm going to quickly mention a couple of things, and then we're going to have Austin take over, share his screen, and we're going to be listening to some amazing info. So these presentations are on a monthly basis. We have a lot of CLE classes and other presentations that we do for all type of businesses. And we usually have one of our employees or myself present those, but sometimes when we stumble upon amazing people like Austin who agree to bring his knowledge and experience to the table, we jump on that opportunity all the time, every time we can. We are here to support people with their technology. We are not here to sell you anything today. The idea behind these presentations and CLE classes is to help the community, bring knowledge. Yes, we do use that to get some exposure for our own marketing goods, but obviously it's a much better and efficient way to help both sides. The content that we put together is very interesting and very useful. What we're gonna talk about today is AI. I'm gonna let Austin explain about who he is real quick, and what we can expect from today's managing data security and ethical challenges when it comes to AI, specifically for law firms, but again, for many other businesses as well. My name is Beits. I'm the proud owner and of Gallop Technology Group and Legal Technology Solutions. I'm a proud father of 4, and I just love education. I love coaching volleyball. I love playing volleyball. My background started in Israel in the intelligence force, and I stuck to technology since then. I find it very interesting and very scary at the same time. Most of our clients are small and medium-sized businesses, and we work with them a lot, not just on the resolving issues side, but we're trying to be on the proactive side and the development side to help the business operations. And this is why we bring people like Austin to the table, where you can learn how technology can really help you build your business and do a lot more than just Excel and Word documents and sending emails. So without further ado, I'm gonna ask Austin if you can please share a little bit about yourself, and then we're gonna stop the presentation on my screen and you're gonna move over to yours. So first of all, Austin, thank you so much for agreeing to be here today and help our clients and friends who are joining today and also watching this recording later. For those of you who don't know, this is a session that should qualify without a problem for a CLE credit. I've heard in the past that the ethics credit should also be no problem to get from this type of knowledge and presentation. We're going to talk about the ethical ruling a lot over here, and there's a lot of useful information for lawyers here. So you will need to send us an email to my email address that's going to be listed at the end of this presentation in order to get a copy of this presentation and in order to get the certificate of attendance. So please make sure that you stick to the end and you can see where to send that information to, so you can get your CLE credit certificate from there. Austin, do you mind please taking over, share a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today and why AI is so awesome in your eyes?
Sure. First, thanks for having me. So some stuff you've already seen from the screen, everybody. I'm a lawyer. I am on the earlier phase of my legal career, but I'm not on the early phase of my professional career. So I worked at Amazon's headquarters doing not AI stuff. I owned an AI company for 2 years that was doing AI stuff. Before that, I was an educator at a university. So I've been sort of around touching first the technology and then later law. I started building this company when I was a student in law school in my 2L year. Since then, we were a featured technology or featured startup at the American Bar Association. I was taught doctrinal AI law by a practice lead for a major US law firm over on the East Coast. And then we've been a partner to various bar associations at the state level, delivered CLEs on behalf of bar associations at, again, the state level, but also at the district or county level, sort of the more local level. So talking to lawyers, building technology tools in the practice, both doctrinally and professionally, and now this is my full-time day job. So that's how we kind of got here. Not my first rodeo. I think I should be able to field really any technical questions you all have, any doctrinal or professional questions, as well as any sort of like business questions. So hopefully across each of those domains, I'll be able to meet your needs. And if, feel free to chime in with questions, truly. Like I said, I'm an educator in a past life. So pretty good at fielding questions on the spot.
We did turn on the Q&A section of the Teams meeting over here, the presentation, so I will be monitoring that if anybody has any questions as we go. I might interrupt you here and there, Austin, when it makes sense, but I'm sure we will have some time at the end, guys, for Q&A. So if you have any questions that you want to ask immediately or think it's related to the topic he's talking about right that moment, please bring it up. Otherwise, you can either write it at the end when we ask for any questions, or we can interrupt him as needed. So again, thank you, Austin, and let's get started.
Sure. Everyone can see my screen okay?
Yep.
Cool. So I will jump ahead to where we were. So to get everybody on the same page, I want to just do a review about kind of the technology, what it is, how it works, so that we can speak more sophisticatedly about how you might consider using it, as well as, sort of technical challenge to consider. Oh no, it's a white screen for everybody else, huh?
Correct.
No good. Let me try again.
You might be sharing the app, it's the application itself, but not the screen, if you want to do the screen instead.
I think the problem from my end is actually that the web browser isn't rendering the file in browser.
Okay, so why don't I share and then we just let me know when you want the next slide, okay?
Appreciate you. Sounds good.
It's always a solution, right?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
So first I want us to start off with sort of what is the wide universe of AI. So artificial intelligence is a really big bucket. We've got sort of subcategories or small buckets inside of that. Machine learning, we'll talk about that a little more, but it's a process by which an artificial intelligence algorithm of some kind sort of is able to quote unquote learn. Doesn't have the cognitive capabilities for us to really call it like learning in the human sense, but it's a way by which these algorithms can use past data to make assumptions or predictions or outputs about future data, new novel data that it's encountering. So in that way, it's akin to learning. Deep learning is a particular kind, and then the sort of thing that a lot of people are talking about today is generative AI. So unlike past versions of artificial intelligence, generative AI is capable of making new things, generative in nature. So this is your image makers, your the ChatGPT that can write you web emails, or people use it to write books, right? The folks that use it to make artificial videos. So this is sort of one of the new places by which the technology has moved. Next slide, please. The reason it matters is because there's sort of a lot of ways that you all might either already be using this kind of technology or considering using it in your legal practice, or just organizations doing sort of related work. Again, I want to talk a little bit about the technical level because it informs the future conversation we'll have. So to do sort of machine learning, the standard ways that are really popular right now is seen in icon 1. You collect a bunch of data. So for something like ChatGPT or the big foundational models, the folks that really have made the most advances, These folks are gathering millions, trillions sometimes of billions or trillions sometimes of documents. They're using math, sophisticated math, to process all of that information in this data pre-processing. So, imagine that you have somebody who doesn't really know English, but you could at scale have them read 1 billion books. Like eventually they kind of figure out some stuff about English. And particularly about books or sort of literature more generally. Model selection, that's not something we need to worry about. Training the model. So here, this is where once you sort of prepped and prepared the data in the data pre-processing part, you're able to train it. This is, again, a bunch of math. I won't bore you with those details, but if you'd like sort of an explainer video designed for non-math, non-computer science people, I've got some like short little 3-4 minute videos put out by some pretty remarkable organizations that break it down in a way that says, yeah, okay, they use calculus and in fact very advanced forms of math, but we can still explain it in everyday language without getting lost in those details. So if you'd like to know, feel free to follow up later. Then you test. You make sure that sort of like these models are doing what they're supposed to do. Are the outputs good? You optimize, you refine, then you deploy. And the last step, it's a step that we'll talk about later. It's the continuous learning part. So these aren't snapshots. Oftentimes there's feedback loops that are built into the products where the outputs are being compared or reused as part of that data collection, right? They're being fed back into the system. So the outputs end up being inputs or sent to different sort of portions of a technology stack that help make the tool better over time. And that's, again, something really important for us to mention here. Next slide. So those are sort of how you would build a model. But once you've made something like ChatGPT, think GPT-3, there's a particular process of inputs, AI, and outputs that informs how the technology works. So a user, like any one of you, might go to ChatGPT and in natural language, or a different example, you might go to Google, you're running a Google search, and your input might be something like, hey, show me 5 recent cases of personal injury settlements that exceeded $1 million in Arizona. And it's going to make you a little list, right? So that's your input. It's going to go to a series of places, whatever's doing the underlying compute. So your favorite language model, Google's proprietary stuff that powers their AI engine, or excuse me, their search engine, summaries, whatever it is, it's going to go someplace. Then you're going to get the output. So this is, the list that it generates of these 10 locations. Now, some programs also have sort of human loop feedbacks. So if you like the response, you can hit a little button and that makes the system know that this is a good output versus a thumbs down or flag. And that's data that is then fed back into the system that helps the algorithm understand what makes for a good or bad output. And again, that sort of matters as we talk about professional obligations and security concerns. But the thing I want you to understand is there's 2 components. One is the creation of the foundational models, making something like ChatGPT in the first place. The next is any tool that is relying on those things, ChatGPT or otherwise. That's an input, processing, output. And the output sometimes is also being back-fed in as an input or otherwise being sent out for review by subsequent pieces of the technology stack. Next.
Before we go next, I have a quick question, please.
Sure.
Not sure want to talk about it later, if you plan on talking about it later or not, but one of the questions we get a lot is the queries that we put in, are those indexed or used by the engine or the software that we're using at that point? I know with Google, obviously, they collect every piece of information because, one of my favorite phrases is, if you are, I forgot how it goes in English, but I think it's something like, if you're not buying any product, you are the product, right?
Product.
It's something.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So the data that we put in is what Google makes money off of down the road. But using something like ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini or whatever it is, can you talk real quick about that? Is it either now or later, if you plan on talking about it later?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a joke about it later. I'll give you sort of the best answer that I can now, which is that, like, unlike something like Google, where your Google searches get aggregated and then sold as data analytics, either about you as an individual or in a bulk sort of, who's searching on these words, how many people, where are they located, right? That all gets sold by Google. ChatGPT, your Copilot, whatever, there's no data that suggests that they're selling that. They're not selling, hey, people are inputting prompts that look like this. However, there is a great deal and fast changing data privacy concerns, and so that involves their terms of use, that involves their privacy policies. So Copilot was, for instance, sort of widely being used by lawyers for a period of time about 1.5 years ago. People were all excited because it's embedded in your Word products, and it's of course put out by Microsoft. The problem was that those prompts, so Microsoft was, if you said, hey, Copilot, like modify my document in this way, the output, the modifications that it made in your Word document was not stored or used by Microsoft. However, that prompt that you were asking it was, and those were being aggregated. So a large number of lawyers immediately discontinued use of any Copilot tools, because if you're saying, hey, Copilot, I'm working on an NDA between, a client and a person sort of slandering them in the press, I need you to rewrite this statement to be more favorable for my client for X, Y, and Z reason. Sort of the X, Y, and Z reasons might be wrongful disclosures or violate some professional ethics, given that, again, that information was being sent over to Microsoft in unanticipated ways. So I would say it's hard to answer that question in short, Baits, because it's ever evolving. And even as I did a review of every single terms of use and privacy policy, I did it about 12 months ago, they've already mostly all been modified. And so quite literally, there are, sort of AI legal professionals like me whose day job is just checking these things every day to see if they've changed, and if so, what has changed. So for all of you lawyers, I know that that's not great practical advice. Instead, I would generally say, we'll talk about your professional obligations, but I would generally say that you should look for tools that are either purpose-built for lawyers, because they can immediately meet your professional obligations, or if you're talking to any sort of vendor supplier, there's a collection of questions that you should consider asking them, like where does the data go? Are my prompts being used or trained on? Are my outputs, right? The difference between, are my inputs being trained on? Are my outputs being trained on? Those kinds of questions.
Okay, and this is something on a side note that your company offers those type of services to help lawyers work on those kind of questions to ask, etc.
Yeah. So we do a bunch of stuff for free, including sort of helping consult on things like how do you questions you might ask a vendor, how to update your engagement letters to be compliant, like what disclosures do you have to make to your clients with respect to the use of AI. And then, of course, we actually build products that lawyers can use that have a bunch of particular functions for lawyers.
Awesome. So for those of you who are interested in reaching out to Austin, his contact information is going to be at the end. So that's good to know, Austin, because I know we get a lot of questions that our team doesn't know anything about, because it's your world and not really an IT, technology, cybersecurity world yet. So that's good to know that you can offer those type of pieces of advice. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And truly, for everybody here, we do it for free because I just want you all to be safe primarily. And then if you end up selecting our tool, then that's gravy on top. So I wanted to identify different kinds of AI and the different ways you might be using them. There's text-based stuff. So that's like ChatGPT. There's image-based stuff, so you can make images. This is like Midjourney. There's audio-based stuff. I'm not super sophisticated on these, but there's tools to both produce as well as digest audio using artificial intelligence. Same with videos. And then there's mixed or multimodal models. So multimodal means that you can tell it in words what you're looking for, and then it might make you an image. You might upload an image and then ask it to describe that image in words, so on and so forth. It can think of it as moving between different modes of creation. I have identified different ways that a lawyer might use each of these things. So Baits, if you could just hit like forward once. Yeah, you might use sort of text-based stuff to write materials. Some lawyers are using image-based softwares to produce like trial materials. So think diagrams, sort of court-related materials, the same way that you might sort of commission work by an artist or otherwise make it with graphic design. So sometimes these are diagrams, flowcharts, timelines of events, but you can just sort of make them quite quickly and cheaply using AI. There's deposition tools to take to either assist in the process of taking down a deposition, or if you have a deposition audio file, you can either use off-the-shelf AI tools or purpose-built deposition AI tools to do stuff in it, analyze it for contradictions, identify sort of tonal changes, stuff like that. If we skip the video, there's also
just a quick note here. I just want to mention that the audio-based AI is something that's been used very widely recently with Teams and Zoom and many of those solutions where the transcription of the conversation happens pretty much real time. A summary happens either real time or at the end. This is something that most people use already, knowingly or unknowingly. One of the things that we actually dealt with and had to disable by default for some of our clients because of the lack of understanding where that data goes is the automatic or the manual ability to transcribe Zoom calls or Teams calls for a law firm. A lot of that information should not be in writing, potentially. The law firm doesn't want anything being recorded. The client doesn't want anything being recorded. So there's some actions there that you can take if you're not aware of the fact that something is being transcribed as you talk to your client because they have it enabled, or as you talk to an opposing counsel. You need to pay attention to those things, and all of those programs right now are obligated to put a little banner telling you that things are being recorded, even though some states obviously have different laws as far as the recording rules, etc. But by default, every software that I know today of the major ones, between Google Meet and Zoom, Teams, etc., will have a banner telling you that the audio or video is being recorded, transcription is turned on, etc. So we are being recorded right now. I believe you guys, maybe because it's a webinar, it's different, but if it's a chat or a meeting, it will have those type of alerts over there. So sorry to steal your moment there.
No, you're right. And so I was kind of talking about the ways that you all might use these and, particular like court-related work, prepping for litigation matters. But Beits, you've pointed out that, your clients might be using some of these materials. So we've got a blog post about how you might be communicating with your client and they might be asking ChatGPT for sort of like side advice, or they might be asking ChatGPT simply to just, for lack of a better word, like decode what you're saying, make it maybe more suitable to their education level. If they're not an English native speaker, if they're just getting lost in some jargon, they might be asking ChatGPT, and that can, for some kinds of legal work, that can prove troublesome for them to be making disclosures to third-party software technologies, particularly something like trade secret protection. That can be one sort of way that you might accidentally obviate it. And then to be clear, it's not even the legal practitioners; it's our clients. Next slide. So I also want to. I think everybody's kind of level of use is pretty different. So I wanted to just kind of start with are you already using it? The answer is probably yes. So Beits, if you just want to slow or plop through most of these, there's things like autocomplete when you're on your phone, when you're texting, when you're in Word, and Word sort of recognizes that you've said a word, you've typed a string of characters that it didn't assess as a word, and it does that. You do that several times, and it quits underlining it in red. That's actually a very simple form of machine learning. Adds it to its library of known words. Search recommendations and summaries in Google. That's another place. Some of you might be using high-powered e-discovery tools. E-discovery has been a place where machine learning and artificial intelligence has been widely used for over a decade. Technology-assisted review. So these are some places you might already be using AI if it scares you. I have this sort of as a way for you to think, okay, maybe this isn't so scary. In fact, you're probably already using it today in some form that you just might not realize. Next slide. So the demos will be kind of clunky, so we won't do them, but I'll just leave you all with sort of a list of software tools, talk about what they're good for, and you might consider going out and looking at them. So I want to give a landscape of the market, both in terms of capabilities and costs, because I think that that's something that, law firms, I work primarily with smalls and solos, and so smalls and solos are way more cost sensitive than, your Kirkland and Ellis's or something. So ChatGPT is pretty good for non-legal work. You might ask it something like, hey, draft me some marketing materials for my website. Like if you had a new blog post you wanted to write for your firm about like a personal injury settlement you had just secured. Pro plans here cost $200 per user per month. And notably, they're not necessarily secure for purposes of your legal obligations. We'll talk about those in the back half. Perplexity is a pretty nice research tool. So with Perplexity, you can ask it a question, and unlike ChatGPT, it generates you a textual response, but then it shows its sources. And you can click any of the citations, and it takes you to the websites it pulled the information from. I've heard other lawyers really tell me they like it for something like, hey, I need to file like an IRS form. I'm not sure which one, on behalf of my client or something. And it indexes the web, finds the right form, and then they go and they download it and they prepare it themselves. But its capability is it's an internet-based research tool, but it only works on publicly available documents. So if it's not there to replace your Lexis or your Westlaw. It has no capacity to access case law, PACER documents, anything that, any court filings, anything that's behind a paywall or access like secured. The next tool I think we have here is Second Chair. So this is my company. We have sort of the capacity for you to securely and appropriately, sort of compliantly upload your documents and then do stuff with them. So we help in legal research, legal writing, preparing work documents, as well as discovery and document review. We're designed for and priced for small law firms, as well as solo practitioners. We're just $150 a month per user. Now we're moving into some of the legal AI first. Legally designed for lawyers artificial intelligence tools. So we have Harvey. They're kind of the premier tool in the market. They're roughly around $2,000 per user per month. They have some remarkable capabilities, but they're really sort of designed for AmLaw top 200 firms or people who really kind of punch up there. That's their market segment, though they have other offerings, I believe. There's also sort of Westlaw Edge, CoCounsel. So Thomson Reuters has Westlaw has its correct collection of products. There's also Lexis AI. Those are sort of more on the some of their product offerings help with like legal research. Some of them help more with legal writing, and they've got sort of different things to select. Their costs vary based on the size of the firm, the collection of tools you want to kind of tack on. So in the same way that their legal research products vary by cost based on how much you want to be able to search over and all those things. So they're sort of priced in those places. For those of you who haven't used AI, I want to give you an example of best practice. So generally, when you are instructing these algorithms, these AI to do something, that's called a prompt. And here I've included an image that was floating around the web prepared by OpenAI, I believe, that sort of gives you an example about how you might best prompt these kinds of tools. So it varies tool to tool, how they're built, the way you might do it. But in general, generally you want to tell them a goal. So make me a thing, write me this, research this. Then giving them a return format is helpful. I'd like a list of bullets. I would like a 1,000 word blog post. I would like your response to be structured like a legal memo. Sort of the form by which you would want this data back to you. Maybe you're looking to make a table with rows and columns, for instance, indicating that to the tool produces a better outcome. If there's anything you don't want it to do, warnings, things to not include, you can also include that. And in some of the tools, if you use the dashes that you see here, you can do sort of a context dump. So I am this person. I'm looking for these kinds of things. For instance, if my, here's an example. A goal might be write me a 1,000 word blog post about a recent victory where my law firm secured $1.2 million in judgment. The return, for the return format, it's just 1,000 word blog post. I want the tone to be celebratory as well as conversational or easily accessible. Warning: don't talk about the opposing counsel. Don't list them by name. Make sure, and then in the context dump, you might say something like, make sure to include quotes on this, this, and this. Make sure to include the factual, description, a factual description of the events, and then lay that out for the AI so that it has access to it. The point is that you can kind of throw in the context dump to just kind of make it prepare better. Next. So in doing so, though, we might think ahead to, like, if I'm including things in that context dump, I should be thoughtful about what information I'm disclosing to the artificial, to the software tool. Does it matter with respect to attorney-client confidentiality, for instance, or is anything privileged? We'll talk about that later. Here, because we couldn't do a demo, I wanted to cover my bases. I included like a screenshot. This is Perplexity, the online research tool I told you about. I asked it, can you find me an article about this, : because of AI, legal service purchasers are expecting lawyers to work faster and decrease their costs. Not only did it write me a several paragraph response, you can see it's included, I believe, 4 or 5 citations. And if this was in on the website, you'd be able to click those numbers and pull up those particular articles themselves and go review them. So it's doing a mix of kind of pulling quotes of information, but also actually rewriting it, synthesizing it, or the generative process of writing. So sometimes the text we're seeing here is novel. It does not exist in any of those 5 underlying sources. It is in fact a novel string of text synthesized out of the materials. So that sort of, can also welcome mistakes. Those are called hallucinations. We'll talk about them later. There's ways to reduce them, but that's something to be aware of. These tools can make mistakes. So as Beits was saying, so you're using this data, so you're using these tools, but who owns the data? I'm going to give you the lawyerly answer. Of course, it depends. First, which data? So prompts, who owns the inputs into the systems? Second, what happens to any materials that you might upload? If you're attaching any documents, do they make claims of IP ownership, copyright, or otherwise over works that you upload to the tools? And then last, who owns the outputs? If you ask it to draft you a memo, this is one you probably would care less about, but if you ask it to draft you a memo, do you, at the level of intellectual property, own the memo output, or does the company and you have some sort of license agreement with respect to that output? Again, these things sort of change, and if you want to follow up with me about sort of more doctrinal thoughts about IP protections, copyright, trade secrets, otherwise, it gets down into the weeds. But as a high level sort of thought, if you're like just a family law person, if you're a trust and estate sort of person, you probably don't need to explore it to that level of detail. But I would encourage you to check the terms and conditions. I would implore you to check the privacy policies. And the rule of thumb, like I said earlier, is that if it's not made for illegal, it's probably not able to meet your professional obligations, and you should be thoughtful about using the tool. It does not mean you can't use the tool, but it does mean you should be thoughtful about how you're using the tool. And we'll talk about those obligations a little later. What can you use AI for today? Beits, if you just blast through, I've got a big list here. There's technology-assisted document review. There's legal research. So my company does this. We've got access to 10 million pieces of case law, all PACER documents, statutes, code, annotated code, CFR, state level, federal level. But you can use these things to do legal research. You can do it. There's purpose-built products for contract analysis, either helping you build and assemble contracts, as well as contract lifecycle management tools. There's proofreading, error correction, predictive analytics. So some companies are starting to move into like reviewing, for instance, how a particular judge regularly rules on issues, and then using that as a way to say, hey, given the similar set of fact patterns that you intend to bring to this judge on behalf of your client, here's the predictive success that we think your case will have. Those tools are not widely popular. They're still sort of being built right now, but it's another place where there's R&D efforts and new capabilities coming online. Of course, generative legal writing. So, write me a draft memo on X, prepare an RFP response on Y, contract document assembly stuff. There's one that my team has, several other folks do. It's automatic citation verification. So as I'm sure you all have seen now over the last couple of years, lawyers are getting in trouble for using AI tools, having fictitious citations. A collection of tools now let you input citations either from your own sort of AI generated work product or work product generated by opposing counsel or other parties. And then you can verify their citations to see if their citations are fictitious or real. And if they're real, go investigate, the documents to whatever degree you care. So, we've got tools so that you can be the first person to find opposing counsel's AI mistakes. Next. We've got, so e-discovery and document review, summaries. I know many different kinds of law firms have struggled with financial records, medical records, et cetera. Many tools now can process those things, both legal AI tools and non-legal AI tools, depositions, client intake, so automated screening of clients. Maybe there's a series of things you often look for before you take on a particular kind of client to see if they're well suited for your practice. There's ways to automate those. Client rewriting. So you might write an email and need it sort of rewritten in a particular way. Maybe your client's wife or husband speaks a different language. Those are kinds of things that it can help with. And then, like I said, document construction. So there's a great deal of ways that you could consider using AI if this is something that you're curious about. Next. To service a bunch of those things, though, you might do any number of tasks. So I've included sort of a timeline of ways that you might use them using our product or some other products. You can generate Boolean search. You can use AI to help you generate Boolean search queries. You can kind of validate the findings to see if they're right. It can help you in assisting work product, that wide range of things we just talked about. Next.
I want to bring in a quick note over here. One of the things that we are internally using here, and many of our clients do as well, is the document construction automation on that side. I don't know how many of you guys use Microsoft Outlook on your computer and on your phone. One of the things that I like a lot using Outlook is, I get an email, for example, from a very annoying customer about a very annoying thing that I just want to vent, and I just want to tell them how annoying they are not listening, and then arguing about something that we told them not to do. And I find myself being a human being and getting pissed off a lot about day-to-day scenarios, and I use that a lot in the last few months since we licensed the Copilot AI from Microsoft for my user account. I'm writing the email that I want to write from the bottom of my heart, if you know what I mean. And I'm asking, then AI pops up and he asks me if I want its help. So I'm using Copilot to rewrite that email in a friendlier way, less attacking and more customer service oriented. It is amazing how well it works. And this is stuff that's built in the tools that most of us already use. A lot of you guys probably don't have the needed license for it, so it doesn't go into the actual documentation in your Microsoft SharePoint or on your computer. It doesn't index your information. It doesn't know much about you. But spending the license, for example, with Microsoft, I believe it's like $30 a month or something, 35, I don't know, per user, allows you to have a lot more of that tool to help you on the day-to-day. So Austin, you're scratching an amazing surface over here, and I'm really hoping that people get excited about the tools that you created and the stuff that's out there already to understand how helpful it can be to not just do research all day long and to draft documents. It's about giving better customer service, which is forgotten in many of those technical discussions in many times that we hear that. So to try it out. There is no, unfortunately, trial that can last too long. If you're turning on a trial on some of those programs, then be ready to start using it. Allocate some time to learn maybe ahead of time how to use those tools before you start your 30-day trial, if that's available for your license, for your Microsoft tenant or whatever it is. You'll be amazed how much AI can actually do for you, for your day-to-day, and for your future of your business. So sorry for the interruption there.
No, you nailed it. I included a blog post we wrote from our company about like, yeah, sometimes you're dealing with opposing counsel and you want to call them names, you want to let your feelings out. So you can draft the email that says that and then give that to the AI and say, hey, write this in a way that's professionally appropriate. And it feels good to get it out. I don't know. Let's move to the next slide. I also think that there's a great kernel of wisdom in what Beits said too, which is like legal practitioners work in different ways, and often you need to understand how what the tools can do so that you can figure out how to use them in the ways that best suit you and your work and your firm. It takes some time, it takes some experimentation. Some tools are sort of, again, purpose built, so it's faster to figure out what they can do and how they might support you. But nonetheless, I think the best attitude is some creativity and interest first, and use those trial periods to sort of figure them out. What can AI do tomorrow? So in some states, there is AI software that's fully licensed to practice law. So all the foundational models have been able to pass I want to say it's the MPTE, but the sort of standard the standard bar testing, both on the multiple choice as well as written portion sections by 2 blind human graders. So off the shelf, these AI tools are capable of sort of performing well enough to be a lawyer, or whatever that means. One state has gone so far as to sort of license one particular software under an experimental license to see if it's actually capable of serving real humans without a lawyer's sort of review. We've also seen some other states like Washington State, I think 2 others, testing the delivery of legal services through software. So something more like LegalZoom, where a chatbot intakes sort of a bunch of stuff, and then an AI automatically prepares a will or a testament, or sorry, excuse me, a will or like a no-fault divorce agreement or whatever it is. So the preparation of documents by software programs, not supervised by a lawyer. It's unclear how many other jurisdictions will sort of follow this trajectory. It's also unclear if these pilot programs will persist or be discontinued. But I think when it comes to the business of law, this is something to think about, because there will be more pressure on lawyers from non-lawyers, which changes the delivery of services. Of course, the billable hour is always called into question, but people have been having their beliefs about if that will go away or not. But it's sort of, again, challenged by this new kind of technology. We're seeing here other ways that sort of legal AI is being used. Next slide. AI agents, I think this will create a bunch of moments for some of you all as litigators to make more money. AI is increasingly sort of, from the Latin word agare, sort of capable or potential to do things in the world. AI agents are sort of given directives and then go out and execute on those. So the simple ones are like AI agents can do things like schedule you a haircut appointment. They'll pull up the AI agent will pull up your calendar. It will call a salon. It will use synthetic voice to ask them if they have availabilities at the same time that you have openings in your schedule. When it gets to confirmation, it will populate that into your calendar and turn off the phone call, right? So you can also imagine there's lots of ways where that might go wrong, which creates opportunities for litigators and other people who support humans who make mistakes. It also means that the AI agents will become increasingly sophisticated with respect to what they can do for lawyers themselves. We'll skip this slide. But AI agents are generally capable of sort of coordinating with other AIs. Ours is built like this. So we have our sort of master AI that like our human users talk to. But then think of it like a boss. It has a bunch of little sub AIs under it, one that researches, one that drafts, one that edits, and then ones that check the final output. So, and then the sort of boss AI reviews that final output and then compares that to what the user asked to see like, did we do a good job? So you can kind of get increasingly sophisticated. You can add more tools or capabilities that the AI might have access to. So that your ethical considerations, the best I could find, the Supreme Court of Arizona had a artificial intelligence committee that produced a report, but there is no true report from the Supreme Court bar. This might have changed since I did my research for this presentation, but some states have true sort of bar guidance. Some states, it comes from a special committee or from a Supreme Court, but this was the best I could find for Arizona. The other thing I'll point out is that there's the American Bar Association's Opinion 512, which is not binding on you and your professional obligations as attorneys in the state of Arizona, but it is also highly persuasive secondary authority, even though it's not controlling. So it doesn't supersede what's put forth in the AISC's report, but it might also be used for things that that report didn't cover. So I would recommend that you sort of check it out or use an artificial intelligence tool to summarize it for you, as we did with ours, just sort of as a joke, but we also did human annotations. So I want to point you to rule of confidentiality 1.6. So lawyers shall not reveal information relating to the representation of a client unless the client gives informed consent, or it's impliedly authorized in order to carry out a particular representation. The reason that matters for artificial intelligence is, if remember how we talked about sort of some tools hold on to the prompts and then use them for other purposes. So Beits, if you would go to the next slide, I think I have a diagram on this. Yeah, so imagine like user A with yellow hairs interacting with the AI. They're saying, hey, help me rewrite this contract. I'm in a, I'm trying to, I'm in mediation related to a particular issue. I need you to rewrite it to be more favorable to, my client, party A. Party A is alleging that party B did blank, blank, and blank. And, we really want to push them on issues B and C. So, rewrite this agreement to be, more forceful on those issues. Well, that information might, go to the LLM, and then user B in blue hair, attempting to do an entirely different task, might ask questions that somehow surfaces the information that user A with the yellow hair inputted into the system. So it produces a wrongful disclosure. In the next slide,
Before we move on, I just want to ask real quick, have you run into any challenges, let's say, where data is segregated from the rest of the world within a law firm? So the firm is uploading documents to the engine to process and learn from. However, the segregation of data within the firm is not that clear, meaning that not everybody should have access to all the data that was uploaded. Does your solution, or are you aware of other solutions out there that are struggling with that or have a solution for that, where employee A should not have access to employee B's uploaded documentation?
Yeah, so the way that our tool is built is every user is walled off from every other user. And the AI we call them data lockers. So anything put into data locker for user A is inaccessible by the AI or any other sort of operational, even from folks at my company, for anything that person B might put in. So to your point, yeah, like if you have conflicts in your law firm, you need strong data segregation if for any number of reasons. Our tool is purpose built that way, but unsophisticated vendors attempting to sell to lawyers who are themselves not lawyers, or maybe just not thoughtful about how they built their technology, certainly can get their wires crossed. And so this is a place where if you're considering a vendor to do AI stuff with, you should be really forceful that it's like, okay, well, is it are the protections at the organizational level or even down at the user level? Because to your point, it needs to be at the user level.
Thank
Next
you.
slide. So the takeaway here is not necessarily don't use an AI tool, but if you're going to use one of the off-the-shelf ones like ChatGPT or Copilot, whatever it is, maybe don't include named entities or the folks you're representing, abstract a little bit, confidentialize a little bit. So say instead of I'm representing plaintiff who's a law school in a labor dispute, instead say, and then name the law school, instead maybe just say I'm representing an organization, a large business, a law school, something like that. Next slide. In Arizona, the guidance that I described earlier, the AISC report, indicates that a legal professional needs to get sufficient guarantees from the vendor that the AI tool will not share or use confidential or non-public information. So unless you're talking to a salesperson at OpenAI, like I don't think that you should be using their tool. Again, if you're going to use it in ways where you're disclosing confidential or private information. If you're using it in a more abstracted way to help you write a blog post, whatever, certainly do your thing. But if you're going to use it for more sensitive information, Arizona is putting on sort of strict rules for you all. Not all jurisdictions have that same level of scrutiny. Data privacy, like we've talked about, make sure that you're looking at sort of grants of ownership with respect to inputs and outputs. I can't go through all the vendors. Some people have made lists though, they try. And if you're really curious, let me know. Be thoughtful about the disclosure of trade secrets either by you or your clients. For those of you who are doing corporate counseling. So again, you can use these tools, but I want you to be thoughtful about the ways that you're using them with respect to data privacy. Competency and diligence. So near rule 1.1, this comes from the ABA opinion 512, not from the Arizona guidance, but you're still ultimately on the hook for anything that you submit to a court or work product you prepare. So make sure that you are being diligent and investigating the underlying truthfulness or veracity of those outputs. Make sure that if it cites to a piece of case law, that case law exists and not just exists, but stands for the proposition for which you're citing to it for. But that's just one example, right? Anytime just because the AI said so does not passing muster anymore. Lawyers are being fined, usually several $1,000s. I haven't yet seen someone who's totally lost their law license, but courts are increasingly getting annoyed with these kinds of mistakes. So you're still on the hook. You still have your duty of competence and diligence to investigate the truth of the things that you're preparing. Next slide. So if you'll go through this, I think, yeah, treat them as a starting point, not as a replacement. Some people, compare them to paralegals, clerks, young associates. Like, think of them as places to start, but not final products. Next. And then candor towards the tribunal. The real takeaway here is, like, if you make a mistake, tell the court, don't lie about it. That has made every one of these professional sanctions get much worse. In fact, the first one, the Mata case, the problem was not necessarily that they submitted fabricated citation authorities. The problem was that they repeatedly lied to the court about it. First, they said they didn't do it. Then they were missing deadlines. Then they were trying to get extensions so that they could find the materials because they were sure they existed, instead of just owning up and saying, hey, we filed something that we didn't review. So sorry. So there's the primary mistake, and then there's the way you respond to the mistake. In the way that you're responding to the mistake, you still have a duty of candor to the tribunal. In other words, don't lie to the court. And then if you're using paralegals, law school interns, summer associates, clerks, however you describe them, you still have the authority, you still have the supervisory authority. So if they're using AI, either make sure that you have a firm-wide use policy that people are following appropriately, or make sure that they're not using it, or if they're using it, they're disclosing it to you. But you do need to sort of, follow up with them. I think that's the 512 opinion. If you want to go look at it, I pulled the big points. There's also pieces in there about billing, client communications, engagement letters, all of the sort of business of law components running your firm. Your opinion in Arizona, or the report from the Supreme Court is hits several of the things I just said, particularly billing, but it's much smaller, so you can cruise through yours faster. And next slide. I think, yeah, I just want to round it out with a thank you. Like, if you want to learn a little bit more about what I do, like I said, we offer sort of like well-priced solutions. I also write about this stuff, track the regulatory landscape, whatever. Feel free to follow up with me by email or LinkedIn, hit the QR code, whatever works for you. I'm definitely around. Otherwise, Beits, I appreciate your time, and I want to give it over to questions.
I appreciate it so much. Before we get to the questions, I just want to thank you again. I think every person that's joining today should dig in deeper and read some of your blog posts and follow you on LinkedIn, because the content that you put out there is ridiculously interesting, even for non-lawyer, non-technical people. So guys, do yourself a favor, stay on ahead of the curve, and follow people like, or specifically Austin with Second Chair. I also wanted to mention that if you are interested in any of those free demos or solution advice that he's offering, take advantage of it. This is his email address and his LinkedIn. We offer very similar kind of simple security giveaways. This is one of them where you can get a free domain check to see if your domain name and email and everything is set up correctly. We also have a very interesting demo of hacking from a Word document, of how a hacker can take over your computer and check your photos and change your desktop background just by you opening a Word document that they send to you. So very interesting little demo over there. And the last thing is for you to stay in touch with me. And the reason why I want to put it here before we get to the Q&A is because to finish on time, I owe you a certificate. So go to this webpage, galloptechgroup.com/Beits, or scan this QR code to be taken to that. On that page, you're going to see my email address. Send me an email. I will verify that you attended and were on this CLE for the last hour, and my assistants will send you a certificate of attendance. Other than that, again, let's put Austin's contact information over here. If anybody has any questions, now is the time. I think you did an amazing job, Austin. So I'm sure there's a million questions that are more technical that probably people cannot think of asking right now. But if anybody has any questions, post them. Speak now, forever hold your peace. Okay, cool. So no questions. And Austin, thanks again. Appreciate it. Very informative. I love this content and I love this topic, and you did a great job. Thank you for your time, and thanks to Second Chair and everyone who attended. And have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you.